6:30. We will call this meeting to order. If everyone will stand and join me in the pledge. There's no flag. In just a moment. Council has a copy of the agenda in front of them. Are there any changes, additions, or motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Are there any announcements this evening? No announcements. Public comment. Is there any public comment, Town Clerk?
Yes, we've received an email from Melissa Rayfield. I've given you all a copy of it, and I will read it into the record. This public comment is in concern of an expedited noise ordinance. It has come to be very evident that Mills River not having an active noise ordinance has diminished my family's quality of life and has the potential to do so for every resident. I live in the house where I grew up, and it is adjacent to the Mills River Crossing development. The construction occurs 7 days a week and can start as early as 6 a.m. and has gone as late as 9:45 p.m. Jeff Tacey, the original spokesperson for Mills River Crossing, assured us that they would not start earlier than 8 a.m. and be completed daily by 6 p.m. Mr. Tacey owns and is the CEO of Franny's Pharmacy in Lester, North Carolina. It would appear that Mr. Tacey was making assurances to persuade the community, or the developer had no intention to uphold his assurances. My most recent experience prompts this comment. On a Sunday evening at 8:30 p.m., the workers of Mills River Crossing were blaring the song WAP. This is a song by Cardi B and is an acronym for Wet Ass P, word for female genitalia. These men also stood on the roof of the house behind us and shouted graphic sexual activity with a woman. I yelled that I could not hear him. I yelled that I could hear him, and this man shouted back, free speech, and followed up this comment with calling me the B word. This type of vulgarity has continued for weeks. Here is where the problem lies. I cannot call the police to help us because there is no ordinance that they can enforce. And believe me, I have tried. The town council would have to create an ordinance. I would like to remind the council that this has been a consistent problem for our family for 15 months. I was instructed by the town of Mills River to contact the developer when I had an issue about something that was not yet covered by the rules of Mills River. Yet again, when I contacted the developer spokesperson, Art Bilek, he responded, as I told you before, those are not my employees, the ones working on the house. Mr. Bilek continued to insult and threaten me on text. I continued to be kind in my request, although his language was reprehensible. Please expedite a noise ordinance to protect those of us who grew up in this community. I propose that the town of Mills River adopt the Henderson County 18-3 loud and disturbing noise prohibited, which would cover all issues that we have had.
Thank you, Sue. Is that the only public comment we have?
Yes, that's the only comment.
Okay. Okay, to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
All those in favor? Okay. All right, regular agenda item A, the steering committee recommendation, the vacancy for the business representative position.
So the steering committee for the Making Mills River Comprehensive Plan was established to provide some direction and act as a sounding board for the development of the plan. At the time it was made up, when it was initially started, it had local officials, planning board members, town council members, also included a representative from the agricultural community, a business representative, and a residential representative. Mr. Bob Kramer from Mills River Brewery was that business representative. He resigned in July, so that seat is now vacant. We have two interested folks who came recommended to us by the steering committee. One is Whit Lanning of Burning Blush Brewery. The other is Elizabeth Jackson of the Riveter. I have spoken with both of these folks, and both of them are very interested. Would love to be a part of the process. So your task tonight is to fill that seat with either of these folks or someone else that you might have in mind.
Does either one live in the town of Mills River?
I believe that Whit Lanning lives in the town of Mills River. And as far as I understand, Elizabeth lives in Brevard.
I know both of them, and they're both new business owners in Mills River. So I'd like to see the council put both of them on the steering committee. Did we make it the motion?
Hold on, how is the composition of the steering? I mean, what is the, I know the composition, but did we make any rules with the steering committee on the number of members?
Just the one it was.
Council, staff recommended a makeup. Council approved that. Any of your committees are at the, it's up to council whether you want to. My only comment on that would be is that you would be, of course, you're adding 2 new people and it's already half finished. Never mind.
Go ahead.
No, that was just my question. See if that was even a possibility.
Then I would like to amend the number and add both of these to this committee.
I'll second it. And I'm not opposed to that at all. I think that at the point that we're at in the process, I think the more input we have, the better. So I'm 100% behind this.
And we've been having a problem with having members of the committee either have to get out or drop out voluntarily. So if we don't have to bring another one up to speed, then I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely.
At this point, we're only Zoom meeting anyway, so I've been doing it from the occasional baseball game. Okay, so there was a motion and a second. All those in favor of appointing both Whit Lanning and Elizabeth Jackson to the steering committee, say aye. No? Okay, none opposed. All right. Moving on, item B, setting a date for a fall workshop.
So this is something that we talked about a couple weeks ago at your meeting. An idea for a fall workshop, which would give us an opportunity to delve a little bit deeper into some of the common questions that we get from both you all as elected body as well as from the town. So we're suggesting that you do October 22nd, which is the same day as your normal meeting for the month of October, just moving it up an hour. That way we get a little bit more time in the evening to talk about whatever it is that we need to talk about. We don't have an agenda set yet. That'll come in September. We just want to get a date on the calendar that you guys can go ahead and authorize. We recommend October 22nd at 5:30.
It's fine with me.
I mean, do y'all think that's enough time? I mean, I'm not trying to, because you still got to do our regular meeting stuff.
That it would not be a regular meeting. It would be
So
just the workshop agenda.
Which is still open. It's still
Yeah.
open for the public.
Okay.
But
So things we have on there tentatively right now are the sheriff's contract, zoning ordinances about erosion control, food trucks, accessory structure, architectural standards, and there's one other one that I'm forgetting. So it would be specific to the workshop agenda, not a regular agenda.
sounds good. Do we need to motion?
Yes, please, because technically you're amending your regular adopted meeting schedule.
Okay. So I'll make a motion that our what's the date?
October 22nd.
Our October 22nd meeting turn into a council workshop beginning at 5:30 p.m.
I'll second.
All those in favor? All right. Item C, the local government coronavirus relief fund plan.
So earlier this year, we learned of additional funding available to local governments to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. Henderson County is eligible for approximately $4.4 million. They have to distribute a portion of that to municipalities. Mills River is eligible for $234,464. Since your last meeting, we've looked at some options for projects, and the ones that we've come up with are replacing, or not replacing, but including touchless sinks in all the restrooms in both this building and the public restrooms in the park, hand sanitizing stations, and increased Wi-Fi capability to the picnic shelter. We're also looking at purchasing some additional PPE, both for staff as well as visitors for the park who might need to come into the building but didn't bring a mask with them. We could hand them one. This is not obviously taking advantage of our full $234,000. However, it is a good use of funds. And the final cost estimates, we're still waiting on one tomorrow, but we anticipate between $25,000 and $30,000. And with council's authorization, we'll go ahead and get that request submitted to the county tomorrow.
Is there any provisions in the fund for us to help provide PPE like to the fire department?
We can do that with those funds. We're not required.
I mean, I hate to give money back.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So, I mean, if there's anything that we can help the fire department with PPE, or if we can, even if there's provisions where we can help businesses in our community provide them with PPE, then I think we should take that opportunity.
Yes, I agree.
Does building an entire new restroom, hand washing facility fall in there or no?
I think that might be a stretch because this money is supposed to be in response to the COVID-19 crisis and not preparation for another crisis. So while there is some flexibility, it's pretty narrowly focused on this particular incident.
What about extra boxes, face masks, schools?
I think similar to Mr. Kimball's question, we can confirm that, and if we're eligible, if this money will work for that, we can go ahead and add to our order of those face masks. Wow.
Does the town have to spend this money and then it's reimbursed from the county?
Yes, thank you. That's a good point. This is reimbursement. The county will receive the money, and then the town will submit a report to them, and they will reimburse the town for that money. And the money does have to be spent by December 30th of this year.
And you may not know, but what happens to the money that the town is allotted that we do not use?
It goes back to the county.
To the county, and they will keep all that money.
So long as they can come up with a justifiable use
I see.
for it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say yes, that you would want to authorize staff to submit the plan and accept any funds. And Councilman Snyder, I've received a complaint. Please use your microphone.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion that we authorize staff to pursue the local government COVID relief funds and any additional supplies or product that they feel necessary.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item D, our favorite, dependent care coverage.
So this is a topic that we've been discussing for the last few meetings. And at the last meeting earlier this month, there was a request for additional information for neighboring communities. And specifically, what we looked for was the, first of all, is the town in the region, their tax rate, their overall budget, number of employees, the deductibles that they have, and then what the premiums are as well as if they offer dependent care or not. And so the list that you have in front of you, I did send a revised version this morning, which is the big 11 by 17 you're looking at right now. This is as much information as we were able to gather in the last couple of weeks. Roughly speaking, of the folks listed here for whom we have data, about 40 to 45% offer dependent care, varying levels. The average is around 75 to 80% for those who do offer, which again is not everybody. It's difficult to draw too many conclusions from this because the plans are so different. For example, Black Mountain and several other communities are on the state health plan. We're not eligible to enroll into that plan. So while we have it as a comparison, that's not something that the town could pursue. Other jurisdictions, for example, Brevard and Henderson County and Transylvania County are self-insured, meaning that they pay the claims once they're submitted from the provider. And so the numbers that you see for Brevard, for example, $102.30 for a family on a biweekly paycheck is roughly $205 a month. That is not the true cost of that insurance. The city is basically subsidizing that to the tune of between 87 and 94%. So they're doing a large percentage of that. Other folks have interesting setups. For example, Columbus has a $10,000 deductible, which seems extremely high. However, if you look at the next column over, no dependent care, but town contributes a total of $8,920 in reimbursement. So the employee's actual out-of-pocket expense for their deductible is $1,080. The way that works is through a health reimbursement account, which is an account that both the employee and the town can fund. Yes, pre-tax, and the employee would go to the provider for whatever service they needed. They would pay that, and then once the process is through their insurance provider, it would go back to in their case, I believe it's their clerk who handles this, and she would get it processed for the employee to get reimbursed after the fact. So it's a little bit laborious for them to do it that way, but they're happy with the plan, and it does work for them. And about 25% of the folks of the 19 employees participate in some form of dependent care coverage. So we attempted to gather information from basically all the jurisdictions within the western region, just outside of Asheville. As far north as Woodfin, I believe we have data for. Weren't able to track anything down for Weaverville. We did get Waynesville and Maggie Valley and a few other folks. So that's that information. The other thing I just want to add to the conversation is this is a really critical decision for the town. I know there are differing opinions on it. It's the challenge we're faced with now is, operationally speaking, we're trying to hire someone, and without the ability to offer some sort of premium care for dependents, we're going to lose a couple of good candidates, I believe. And we could certainly re-advertise for the position. That's not something that we want to do. We're anxious to get somebody on board. And so I really need a direction and a decision so that we can either authorize this and get somebody hired, or if not, re-advertise and try to find somebody who we can hire who doesn't need this sort of benefit. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. All the information I have is in front of you. I did get a last-minute email from Tryon about the number of employees, but it didn't include much else about the actual health insurance rates. So again, I'll just summarize and say that it's difficult to draw conclusions from this data because it is so varied. Some people have been on the same plan for a number of years. Some people just recently changed. There are examples from other communities I spoke with about recruitment challenges. They've made offers to people and have lost out on employees because they can't afford the premiums to provide for their family or their spouse or their child. So it's an issue that is obviously not unique to Mills River, and it's a challenge for everyone. Everyone is trying to figure out what's best for the town, what's best for the employee, and the rates vary, as you can see, from no charge for an employee all the way up to, I think Flat Rock has one of the higher rates for families at $788 each time they get paid.
So Daniel, is that, refresh my memory. So just talking about current employees, is that if we did something with dependent care, did you tell us that they would not be able to sign up the dependent until June or July?
That's right. Unless, this is the caveat, unless there is a qualifying event.
Unless they get married, have a baby.
Exactly.
Whatever. Okay.
Or loss of coverage. Like if a spouse has coverage, but they lose their job, for example, that would be a qualifying event.
So that brings me to my next, is that this seems like it's being rushed. And I don't like to be rushed. So our current employees, is that if they can't sign up until June or July, is that why don't we wait until June or July to deal with this? Now, my next question is that I think that you told us at the last meeting that you had made an offer to a potential candidate.
Right.
So how long is that offer good for?
Tomorrow.
Do what?
Tomorrow.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're anxious to get somebody on board. I was going to update you over at the end of the meeting under updates. In the whole month, or excuse me, the whole year of 2018, we issued 124 permits. At this point last year, we had issued 88, and this year, as of today, we're up to 129 permits. So permit activity is very, very strong right now. It's a lot in terms of just raw workload to make all that happen. The comprehensive plan obviously is extremely important, and we need to kind of get in front of this before it becomes an issue. Which is why I've tried not to rush anyone in this. The money is in the budget that was approved back in June. It's really a matter of, is the town ready to help provide this benefit so that we can make sure we get the best and the brightest for our position. And one of the concerns about it being a percentage was that if the rate changes, well, then obviously the town's portion would go up. So we took roughly 75% of the premium difference and use that as a flat rate to be used. And then that can be reviewed each year, just like you would any other item in the budget. So that's what we're recommending. It's $575 a month for the employee, $675 a month for the spouse, and then $1375 a month for a family.
That's what it costs for the employee and, right?
No, that would be the town's portion.
But that's the employee and, you're saying
yes.
town.
Yes. So if, for example, if you have one employee with one child or multiple children, the town's cost would be $575 per month.
Okay. But to add just the child is the $381.50, right?
Look at the numbers. Yes. So if you were a current employee and had children and wanted to add them, it would cost you $381.50 per month.
Okay. I guess what I'm asking is what is the total cost to add a child? Not including the employee cost. You see what I'm saying?
That is it.
Is the $575?
No, it's the $381.
That's what an employee would pay, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I should have those numbers. Let me grab those real quick.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so excuse me, the actual cost, let's say the employee is responsible for 100% and they wanted to add a child or children, they would pay an additional $763 per month. And then $890, excuse me, $897 for a spouse, and then $1,885 for the family.
How much was the family?
$1,885.
All right, so I'm confused because these numbers here are 50% based upon what you just gave me.
So what you're seeing in front of you is per pay period. So if something, we get paid 24 times a year.
Okay.
So to get the number that's in the chart, we would take the full cost of the family, or excuse me, yeah, let's just go with the family. 1885 times 12, 22,620, divide that by 24 is 942. So that is the full monthly cost right there. So what you see in front of you is what it would cost the employee to add either children, spouse, or family per paycheck. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I'm just trying to figure out something. Give me just a second. You can talk about other stuff if you need to while I'm doing my math. It might take a minute.
Daniel, just for maybe somebody watching on the internet or something, Mills River's tax rate compared to these other towns here, Mills River's tax rate outside the fire department is how much?
8 cents.
8 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So whenever, I know you said don't read too much into this numbers here, but whenever we look at whenever Woodfin, for example, here, population is, 1,000 less people than Mills River. Their budget is within,
Yeah.
$300,000 of
Right.
Mills River budget, 28 employees, but their tax rate is 28 cents when ours is 8.
Mm-hmm.
And they still offer no dependent care for their employees. And that's just the one that's closest in their budget and their tax rate and population.
Right.
So more than half of these comparisons here do not offer dependent care for their employees. So we're not going to be all that unusual if we choose not to go this road. For dependent care, in my opinion, it's as their employees grow in numbers, this is going to become more and more expensive, and I'm having a hard time with it as far as looking out for the taxpayer.
The difference between Mills River and Woodfin would be sales tax revenue. What's in Woodfin? Here we've got so much light industry, and that's where the majority of our revenues come from. So I think I looked at this and I could draw no conclusions from it. I went through the entire thing twice, and I really don't. I mean, I appreciate Daniel pulling this together. I think it's been a useful exercise for us. But when I looked at it, I really didn't see any towns that were so similar to Mills River, and certainly not multiple municipalities, both in terms of the factors that you mentioned, but also sales tax revenues. And that's where we get most of our money. I've got a question for Daniel, though. If you don't mind, do you recall from the budget and what you budgeted for dependent health care, do you remember what percentage of the overall budget that was?
I believe it was factored on what I'll call the worst case scenario of 2 employees, because we had one employee who was going to take advantage of it, and then we had an opening for an employee. And just to be conservative for the budget, I assumed that person would be needing the family care. And it was 0.75% in that range of the overall budget to provide for those two folks.
So less than 0.8% of the overall budget.
That's right.
That's what we've been talking about for 6 meetings straight. Okay.
And there is a lot of good information in this if you choose to look at it. And that's, we have a $500 deductible. No one else in here, with the exception of one town, has a $500 deductible. So to me, if we're going to make the argument of it's about retention and benefits, you have to look at the whole picture. So when somebody's looking at taking a job somewhere and their deductible is $2,500, that's an additional $2,000 out of their pocket, right? So we're basically giving our employees a $2,000 check in the deductible right there. So that's $2,000 to the head. So then when you start looking at how much they participate or how much they contribute in, this for Woodfin, they have no dependent care, but their deductible is $2,500. So they're much deeper in the hole in the long run if they take a job there in the bigger picture than they are if you just look at the numbers. That's why this information is important, because it's the whole picture. There is some information that, yes, it's hard to compare, and you start breaking down tax rates. Some of these departments offer additional, or not departments, some of these towns offer additional services that we don't offer, but they are services that we've talked about picking up. You know, if we picked up garbage service or some other, you're talking about adding 10 employees. So now your budget went from this year with 8 employees to now you've got 18 employees, and that's a tax increase. So that's why I'm trying to be extremely cautious in this, because it's not that I'm opposed to it. It's that I think there is a number in the middle where it fits, where the town wins, the citizens of Mills River wins, the taxpayer wins, and the employees win. And there is a number that achieves that. It's just that it's going to take time to get there. If it takes 5 months to get there, I'm willing to put the work in to get there. You know, I would rather do that. And I've made it clear, you know, everybody says, well, if we run into budget problems in the future, we can take that away or we can change that number. Yes, you can do that. But if you do that, you will demoralize the employees to a level that you have never seen before. And the reason, you know, I go to departments all over West North Carolina, and I can walk in some departments, and 10 years ago, they took away their dependent care, and they will make a comment about it to this day. And they do not forget. And that is, and I don't want to be put in that position. And I don't want to put Daniel in that position where he gets to tell his employees, you know, I'm sorry, but we're going to cut this. And then he has to deal with the morale issues, and the citizens get to deal with the morale issues.
The position we're going to put Daniel in, I mean, you talked about if it takes 5 months to get there, right? We're talking about pennies on the dollar, less than pennies on the dollar. We're going to put Daniel in a position where he's doing another job on top of his own for that 5 months that we're talking about. So I want to keep things in perspective here. Sure. And if it's about saving money, remember that we set a target for our fund balance. We agreed there was a range we were going to stay within with that fund balance. So if we save money on this, we have to spend it on something else, right? So I don't want this one issue to become bigger than it is, because it's really a very simple thing. It's an added benefit to extend to the employees I've spoken to, and which is all of them, they want this. So I think it's a small thing. We certainly can afford it. It's within the budget. Our sales tax revenues are much higher than we thought they would be. So I would prefer not to talk about it for another 5 months. I think that's where I'm headed with this. And I think Daniel would probably prefer not to talk about it for 5 more months, since he's wearing 2 or 3 hats right now.
And let me clarify, it's not that I want to talk about it for the next 5 months either. I just want time to find the right number. And one of the things that, you know, I have asked people in the community, you know, if the town of Mills River creates this, are you opposed to us spending tax money on it to pay for a dependent's insurance? And, you know, some of the responses I've gotten back, it is a mixed bag. You know, some people are like, you know, it is what it is, but, you know, I don't have that. And then I've heard people say, if the town of Mills River has that much free money that they can pay for somebody who doesn't work there's insurance, then they need to give me tax money back. So, you know, there is mixed results, and it's not, you know, that's what I'm saying. There's a number that we can find where everybody is happy. And I don't want to start off, you know, way up here and then have to change it down. I think we can find the number, and, you know, the employees win, you know, and the citizens of Mills River win, and the tax rate stays the same. And, you know, the problem is that, to me, there's a lot of big things that are coming up decision-wise in the town of Mills River with additional services or whatever we choose to offer. And that's could potentially impact the number of employees that we're not even projecting in any of this. And that's what scares me, is it's not, as far as year one this year, yes, we can afford it. It is in the budget. It's already been budgeted. It's year 3, 4, 5, 6, because insurance does nothing but go up. We know that. And, you know, depending on how many claims get filed and all that other stuff, then that's going to affect our premiums. So I think there's a number in there where everybody can win. And that's my thing, is if it takes time to get to that number, that's where I'm at.
So just again, for a little bit of reference, in fiscal year 16, our premium was $921 a month. Then it inched its way up to what it was last year, which was $1,111, and that's for an employee. So we're at $898 right now. So it's a significant savings from where we've been over the last 5 years. And even though we as a group might not have discussed growth and additional employees, I have thought of that, and I have spreadsheets upon spreadsheets, you know, how we're going to pay for capital projects, what it's going to cost to do this, what it's going to cost to add another employee there. So that's not something that has been ignored. It just hasn't been discussed at this group, because I just don't think that it warrants additional discussion, because this benefit is being added without a tax increase this year, and what we hope to be one of the lowest years that we have coming out of a pandemic. So as long as everything continues to climb, even if it climbs slowly, we're still going to be coming out ahead of this thing than where we were. Retail sales are beyond where they were at this point last year. You know, real estate is beyond where it was at this point last year. Our sales tax came in at the highest it's ever been since the town incorporated. So it's not about the money at this point, because the money is in the budget. You've approved a budget with this money in it. In fact, you approved a budget with more money than necessary to add this benefit, because that budget was based on our previous rate, which we modified after the budget was presented. Also taken into account, we've not had a planner since July 1st, well, since May, but in this fiscal year. So when you factor in the salary that we're saving, the retirement costs, the other costs that associated with having an employee, you know, we're looking at a $30,000 savings right there, which would beyond pay for this benefit for this year. There are other items from a financial point of view that can be considered in the future. We do have a low deductible. We had that low deductible because we looked at what we were paying for our plan last year and compared it to what we could get for the same amount of money with Blue Cross, and decided that we should get as much as we can pay for. And even with getting this great plan, we're still saving about $25,000 over what we would have paid had we stuck with MedCost. So a lot of different scenarios have been worked out. And I'm saying to you as your manager that this is a decision that I hate to put pressure on you, but we're in a very busy time, and I don't see Mills River getting slower. We need to be at the staffing levels so that we can perform the services that the town expects. I mean, ignoring adding services, just maintaining what we have. You know, we had a full-time planner for a reason, and there's more work now than there's ever been. If you look at just the permit, the amount of inspections that are required, comprehensive plan, there's just a lot of work that has to be done. And I don't want to miss out on the best candidate we've been able to find from a nationwide search, simply because of the fear of the unknown. And that's what this is. We don't know what health insurance is going to do next year, but I can tell you from my financial point of view, we can afford a fairly significant increase in a rate and still spend less than what we budgeted for this year, because again, the budget was based off of last year's rates that we got when the budget was being developed. So even if the rates go up next year, it will still most likely be less than what we've budgeted this year. So there would not be a tax increase necessary for that, so long as we meet all of our other revenue expectations for the year. And there's no reason to believe we won't. We've budgeted 97% collection rate for our property tax. That's one of the lowest rates that we've seen. We don't expect it to be that low, but we, again, for conservative purposes, we're budgeting for that. Our sales tax numbers continue to increase. We were down a little bit in the month of, what would have been the month of April, but that was when the entire country was locked down and prohibited from going to retail locations and spending money, prohibited from going to barbershops and restaurants and liquor stores and everything else where they spend money. And even though we were down year over year, we were still $10,000 higher than what we predicted we were going to be down. So it was a loss, yes, theoretically, but it was still more than what we expected, and it was $15,000 more than what was budgeted for that month. So this is not a concern from a management point of view. I am not concerned about the ability to pay for this because the town's already budgeted the money to do it. If we have a rate increase next year, we can afford to do it. I mean, that's the bottom line. It would take a significant rate increase to be able to put us above where we would have been this year had we stayed with our previous provider.
Just a couple of points. Weaverville does not offer dependent care. I know that for a fact.
Okay.
The other thing is that just because it's in the budget doesn't mean that we have to spend the money. Is that it's a line item. It's just sitting there in a holding pattern, but that doesn't mean that we have to spend it. And the thing that worries me about this dependent care, and I asked the lady the other night, is that what we're doing, and I hate to put it in this term, but I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can, is that we're buying a vehicle. Is that we know what the payments are this year, but 2, 3, 4 years down the road, we don't know what the payments will be. And that's the part that scares me. And basically, I've said this before, basically, we're writing a blank check down the road, because I asked the lady. So I said, if we do something this year and take it away next year, Brian even made the comment, is that you're talking about morale hitting the bottom, it'll hit the bottom. The other point I want to make is that I'm not for doing dependent care for just 1 or 2 or 3 employees. I've said this before. You said it was fair. It's not. Because if I was one of those employees that decided not to have kids or not get married or whatever, so you're punishing, you're giving something to somebody else, another employee, that you're not giving to me. And I don't think it's fair. So is that, do you need a decision tonight? Okay.
It's I think fair is a matter of opinion. I can tell you in speaking with our employees, this is not an issue for them of fairness. They see it as a benefit.
I've heard the same thing.
I think it's an issue.
I understand your point. I'm simply relaying what I hear from staff who works this day in and day out, that they see this as a positive thing. And yes, if you have a family and I don't, you're getting a benefit. I don't, but also my deductible's lower. I'm not paying anything out of my own pocket for my premium because it's covered by the town. So there are benefits to existing employees, even if they don't have families.
And Roger, I'll give you a real quick example of that. I spoke to one of the employees about this very topic, and I won't name the employee, but they told me that they would not take advantage of this program, but that if their spouse were to lose their job, they would see that as a safety net that they could then take advantage of if they needed to, while their spouse was looking for another job. So that's the sense among the staff that I've spoken to, is that even if they weren't going to take advantage of it, they would see the benefits of it being there in case they needed it. So if that answers any question in terms of the fairness aspect. Okay.
And I guess I just want to clarify, we say a lot of it's already in the budget for this year, but no one can enroll unless there's a life expectant or life changing event until July of next year, which is a different budget year. So we don't have the money for next budget year already assigned. That's what I'm getting at is, yes, we have the money in this budget year, but you can't take advantage of it till the next budget year.
Except
So it's not that it's necessarily there. I mean, it is there, but it's not.
unless we hire a planner who wants to take advantage of it.
Correct.
That's
That's
they
yeah.
can
Or there's a life
take
changing
advantage
event.
now.
So I understand what Roger's saying a little bit from the standpoint of it is a year out. You know, now does that mean that we can't make a decision at some point? No, but I know I'm probably the deciding factor. It's just that, you know, I'm a numbers guy, and if we're looking at it from trying to attract people, then there is a number there where when you factor in what the deductible is and what percentage we pay, that it's on par versus, you know, just because I can go buy a $600,000 house doesn't mean I need to be house poor. And that's, you know, that's where I stand from. There is a number there that we can achieve all these things and the employees can have great benefits. And, you know, and yes, we can back off the deductible, but I don't want to penalize a single person because maybe we have an employee who has children and spouse who have a lot of claims, and it raises the premium. And then we got to take this number. Well, then essentially they get punished because there's too many claims on insurance. So there's a way where everybody can win. If it takes us some time to get there, I'm much more inclined to do that. That's just me. I mean, I just, you know, and you did a good job. You got all these numbers. I'm not, you know, it's not your, you know, some of the other towns didn't respond until yesterday or today. And that doesn't necessarily help us, but, you know, cause I want to be thorough. And you've said that you've predicted some capital expenses. That's fine. I would be curious to see those. I mean, that helps me.
They're in CIP.
Okay. And that helps me to know but you haven't, I mean, have you said how many, without being around the bush, if we're talking about the sheriff contract, you know, if we do something different, do you know how many employees you're going to need for a garbage pickup service?
We wouldn't, that would be, the feasibility of that is pretty low. We would look at a different service.
Okay. So if you did streets and roads, do you know how many employees we have to have?
No, I don't.
Okay. So that's what I'm saying is that very potentially could be in a 22, 23 budget. That's right there. I mean, so those are the things. It's not this year. It's not, you know, it's making sure 2 to 3 years from now, we're not backing off on something. That's where I come from. And I think there is a number where we can make everybody win. And that's just my thing.
It is about this year. I hate to be that way, but we've interviewed 19 people for this position. And I'm telling you the candidates that we have are strong. And the one that's number one is number one for a reason. And his reply to my offer was, I would love to be part of the team. I'm looking forward to it, but I have a family I have to take care of, and I can't afford dependent care for my entire family unless there's some sort of support from the town. And that might seem or sound short-sighted to you folks, but it's not. This is a benefit that, yes, it's not provided by a lot of people, but it is provided by people. And we can afford to do it. And if the rate does change, it's my job as the budget officer for this community to factor that into the budget that I present to you next year. So before there's any inkling of you having to, quote, take something away, if we can't afford to do it, I'm not going to put it in the budget. And that's my decision to do as your manager. That's my statutory requirement to do that, is to put it in a budget and say, I recommend we fund these things just as we did this year. Just as we set aside $31,000 of our tax rate to put into a capital reserve fund. So we are able to spend money even in a down year. And it's impossible to predict what will come of this in the future, just as it is impossible to predict when we might get another Lowe's distribution center, or we might get another Sierra Nevada, or another Amazon, or something of that nature. You know, the tax revenue from those two projects alone would cover this benefit for at least one employee. So yes, there is unknowns around the rate of the premiums. That's not unique to Mills River. We also don't know what kind of development is going to occur here. I mean, who would have thought Sierra Nevada would come into town and invest what they did, and the same with Amazon. The Lowe's distribution center, which is permitted this week, that happened very quickly, and that changes things. You know, and we've permitted 19 new houses in the month of August this year. I don't know the exact figures of those, but they're listed at $500,000, sometimes $1 million. So that means the construction cost is pretty significant. Now, granted, we have a low tax rate, so we're not seeing a lot of money off of that, but it is growth without having to really invest in anything, because the private sector is doing what the private sector does and develop and add value to the world. So that's not going to stop either, even if the rates do change. We have all signs point to continued growth and development in the community and nationwide. We will get through this pandemic. We will. That's a fact. It might not be tomorrow, but things are looking promising long term. And so I just think that it would be a mistake to not offer this now, because we're going to have to re-advertise for our position and go through that process. And quite frankly, I am overwhelmed. I don't like to complain about my workload, but I'm telling you that work is not getting done because I'm doing two jobs. And we can talk about why that is the way it is, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot going on in Mills River right now. And
If you're overworked,
mm-hmm.
is that in the interim, why don't we contract with the company on an as needed basis? Is that we've done it before?
Mm-hmm. I don't think that's the same level of service, and we can afford to offer this benefit.
Wait, we've done this before,
mm-hmm.
and it was actually better. Now, keep in mind, that's been 15, 16 years ago.
It's been at least that long, and I don't believe that company provides that service any longer.
Well, but I'm sure that there's other companies out there that do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Brian, to your point, is that you mentioned a couple of times, is that you're not ready to make a decision tonight, that you think that we can find a middle of the road. Is that fair? All right. Then why don't we table this and put it on our workshop agenda?
If I may, what would be different in October versus what we have right now?
What?
What would be different about discussing this in October compared to what
we would have
right
more
now?
time to discuss this.
To discuss what specifically?
So for me, it's the numbers, and it's finding the perfect number. And you've projected 75%, but that's my thing is for me, it's the total picture. We haven't broke down for me, and I'm a numbers guy. So maybe it's just me and nobody else cares, and that's fine, but a $500 deductible versus a $1,500 or a $2,500 or, a $10,000. I know they get the other thing, or the 80-20. To me, it's the total picture, because when I look at a job, if I'm a candidate for a job, I have to factor in every benefit and because it's the total benefit package.
Mm-hmm.
So just because someone, pays part of my 20% of my dependent care and my deductible's $5,000 out of pocket for my family versus $1,000, that's a huge difference. I mean, so to me, it's the total picture. And for me, it's finding a safe number to begin with. And I just want more time to review the numbers. And I know that's what I need the additional time for. So
what if we went with, instead of 75%, it's 65-35?
We could, but that's the whole thing. I mean,
I still wouldn't support that.
I understand.
So it's just finding, I have to do the math myself to figure out where I'm comfortable at.
I think what we're hearing from Daniel is that, and this is what I'm afraid of, that this scenario that he's presented us with, we have a top shelf candidate who's ready to take the job. He's going to tell us no tomorrow because of this very small item, less than 0.8% of our budget. We're going to lose a top shelf candidate. And that story will repeat itself over and over and over. And in Mills River, we have just an absolutely exceptional situation where we have light industry coming to us in a what is essentially a depression. And this is a situation where we are continuing to grow. Daniel has done everything we've asked over this process. He has come from a percentage back to a fixed amount. I think he's looked for every possible cost savings he can find. I understand that you want to be comfortable with the numbers, but as somebody who's been here for a little while, I've been comfortable just because I know the ebb and flow of the budget. I'm very comfortable with this because it's a fixed number and we don't have to worry consistently about it as a percentage. And I don't want to lose top candidates as employees. And I just see this happening again and again and again. We are getting very, very strong advice. I don't know that Daniel could be any more forceful with the recommendation that he's making to us, saying he needs help. The town needs this person. And I think we are failing in our duties if we do not find a way to get this done.
I think the most important thing the town can, one of the most important things to invest in is our people, our staff. When you treat them right, they take pride in what they do. They stay around a long time. They treat people that they deal with well. And that's, how everyone should look at their staff. We're quibbling over what equals, what pennies on a dollar per taxpayer. We're in a unique position. Everybody's dying to be in Mills River. Everybody wants to be here, build here, to have their business here. And I just think this is, I don't think there should be any question about offering this to the employees. And we talk about morale. You think they're not sitting, the ones that aren't in this room are not sitting at home watching this online and hearing us kind of quibble over.
We are wearing
it would make me, if I was sitting at home watching this, knowing there's a council talking about, my benefit package, it would hurt my feelings.
My whole thing is, Daniel, you've made it clear, and I've heard you say numerous times the town can't afford this. Just because, and I've heard it in this room tonight, just because we can afford it doesn't mean we should afford it. The town has 8, 9 employees when the planner comes on that's eligible for this. I'm looking down the road whenever it's 20 employees. It's manageable at this time. I know I've read the budget. We can't afford it right now. But I think it's our job to look down the road to decide whether it's this council 10 years from now, Daniel is our manager, or 4 managers from now. You're going to be coming back each and every year if you put this benefit in, asking for more money, because insurance costs will continue to go up and you won't be able to cover just the insurance cost increases with adjusting on the deductibles and the coverage. So each and every year from now on, this council and the next councils after will be addressing this issue. And I just don't think it's a benefit that I can support.
That's not different than where we are right now. And we've had health insurance, and so it's considered every year. And like I said earlier, over the last 5 years, this is the lowest we've paid for health insurance this year with our premiums for our employees. And that's because we switched carriers. Now, if we get into next year's budget cycle and rates increase, an unfathomable amount, and we have to do something, there is a myriad of options out there that would not be a penalty to people who don't need dependent care. There aren't, I mean, there's health reimbursements account, there's health savings accounts, there's higher deductibles, different co-pays. I mean, there is just a tremendous amount of opportunity to look at different options.
If I could interrupt you for a second, then it's my problem is, and it's not for the employees that I have the problem with, it's for the dependents. The dependent care coverage, to me, is hard to sell out here in the community to the people that are paying for it. It is, and that's where I'm at.
I don't have dependent care coverage, but I wouldn't begrudge someone else from having it. You know, you're looking at 20 years down the road, and you think X amount more employees is going to be too expensive. But if you have X amount more employees, we probably have X amount more services, and our tax rate is different, and our revenues and our incomes are different. So it's like percentage wise, it's going to be probably in the same ballpark. And again, that is something I'm sure Daniel has to look at every year. Most employees do look every year when it's time to renegotiate their health insurance, switching companies, changing up different options. So there is a comment on Facebook, somebody in favor of it. Somebody watching now.
I think we have a responsibility too, not to govern from a place of fear, because you're right, everything's going to change as we go forward, and it's our job to adapt to change. It's Daniel's job to adapt to change. Daniel wants this. He's advocating forcefully for it tonight. You know, the decision we make tonight, and I'd like to vote on this tonight. The decision we make tonight is going to determine whether we get a top-notch planner tomorrow. And that's what it comes down to. It's going to determine whether we get top-notch people going forward. Every single time
we keep the ones we have.
That's right. So given the small percentage of the budget that this represents, given the fact that every employee I've spoken to wants this, sees the benefits of it, sees that we're going to retain better staff, that we're going to attract better staff, to me, I just see this as a no-brainer. I know we could go round and round and round, and we've already done that. You know, we talked about the enrollment period. We missed the enrollment period because we were talking about this. So that pushes us into the next enrollment period. We could be talking about this next year. The fact is, we will continue to adapt. Mills River is in a very unique situation, and I expect that situation just to get better and better as we go forward. So I'm 100% behind this. I think Daniel's done a spectacular job of putting this together. I don't think it's fair to continue to ask him to do two jobs indefinitely. I mean, we could burn him out and be looking to bring in another company to do another job search.
On a job
exactly. Search. And you know, there's a phrase, penny wise and pound foolish. And I think that's exactly what we would be doing if we turn this opportunity down.
I mean, for me, it's, you know, I understand all the points and the sides, and yes, but if we don't vote on this tonight, we're not taking anything away from any employee that they currently have. So it's not taking anything away from anybody. Everybody who accepted their job and currently works at Mills River accepted their job based upon the fact that there was no dependent coverage, right? So we're not taking anything away from anyone at this point in time. We're not changing deductibles. We're not doing anything that harms any employee. You know, we're talking about adding a new benefit, which the new planner would be able to take an opportunity to take advantage of that. And any existing employee can only take advantage of it if there's a life-changing event until July of next year. So the chances of that stuff happening is minimal. So the benefit to current employees is not realized until July of next year. So, you know, and I understand the governing out of fear thing, but for the last 3 months, everybody in the country has governed out of fear. So we can't say that you can't govern out of fear. You can't govern out of fear saying we're going to lose top-notch people or somebody may leave. That's governing out of fear. I mean, you can stretch that anyway. So I understand where everybody comes from. For me, I don't feel comfortable making the decision until I know more. And I feel like it's my responsibility to have that in my head straight when I vote yes or no. And that's just where I'm at. I'm not going to wait till July of next year to do this. No, because I'm not going to put it under the gun where somebody else misses out. But unfortunately, that's just where I'm at.
I'm not comfortable in deciding tonight.
Roger, you said you wouldn't even support, what was the number, like 30, 60, what do you say?
Well, so the numbers that we originally presented were based on a percentage of the premium. There was concern about the percentage because if the rate changes, then the actual amount would change. So we took that same percentage, converted it to a fixed amount, and it works out to roughly 75% of the premium. So just for discussion's purposes, I suggested 65-35, and then so you'd multiply 65% times the rate and you get a different.
So Roger, you said you wouldn't be comfortable support that either. Is there a percentage or a number you would support?
At this moment, no. But I am open. Is that we have people on the right, we have people on the left. Is that I agree with Brian, is that are there a happy medium that we all can agree on? Do I know where that number is right now? No.
What's it going to take us to get to that? I mean, we've talked about this since March, April,
May,
I don't know.
really.
Spring was a blur.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, at what point can we agree and get to a number?
I think we're close. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I think we're close, but it's just, we had numbers still coming in today. So I need time to calculate and process all the information in my head so that I can get around it. And yes, we have been working on it since April or May, but every time we've gotten more information and different information. I mean, to me, the deductible information, that's huge information. The number of employees is huge information. And, we can shape it up and say that it's not relevant, but it is relevant, and, it's tough decisions and it is what it is. And the timing might not be great, but just because the timing isn't great doesn't mean that we make the wrong decision. That's just where I'm at. For me, I have to have more time. I don't.
So from what I can see, and you guys tell me wrong, the other council members can tell me that I'm wrong, is that there's 3 of us that need more time, that we'd just like to discuss this later. Is that right, Brian?
Yes, I'm asking.
Randy?
He doesn't support it either way, any version.
So again, is that we all have different ideas. We all know where our comfort zone is. And so let's get at the workshop again to where we can sit down. People has time to think about this, to see where we're at, to see if we can meet in the middle.
Okay, so apparently that's where we're leaving it. No decision. All right, so staff updates from the finance director / town clerk, Sue.
We still have an opening on the Board of Adjustment for a second alternate. I don't have any applications, and that's really all I have to say.
Thank you, Sue. Daniel, other things to report?
Yeah, I've got a few things. Let's see. I mentioned sales tax already. We talked about the planning director. Permits, just want to give you a quick update on that. I mentioned that, a little bit earlier, but we have 129 permits in the database so far. I've not finished processing the last few. Development-wise, I'm sure you've seen a lot going on. Amazon is close. They were issued their temporary certificate of occupancy this week to begin moving in, I think, for office furniture and stuff like that. Earlier this week, I believe it was Tuesday, we issued a permit for a Lowe's Home Improvement, not the grocery store. Someone asked me that question. Lowe's Home Improvement Distribution Center. That's on Banner Farm Road, next door to the town's property. That is, I don't know when they are planned to begin construction. The O'Reilly's building is going up. You see they're starting to go vertical with that. And then the Food Lion building behind that is no longer Food Lion. It's going to be a storage center, indoor storage. We also have plans for a storage facility on 191 off of Haywood Road, 191 North. 19 single family permits this month. Mills River Crossing has started on phases 3 and 4, which are on the other side of 280. They started this week moving in some equipment and putting up all of their erosion control, sill fencing, all that kind of good stuff. Cut in a couple of temporary driveways.
Do you know anything about the water line?
What's that?
Will you know about the water line?
I don't know anything about it yet, but I will.
Will the town, will we know?
I can make sure that we know. There's no notification requirement, but I can talk to the engineer about that.
There's several people down the road that are interested in having done that water.
Yeah, he's heard from me several times.
Even
Public input for the comprehensive plan is scheduled for September 16th and 17th. Couple points for all of you to spread the word amongst all your folks and constituents is make sure that you complete your census form. The response this year has been very low. They're actually ending it early this year. Yeah, it doesn't take long at all. It's worth doing. That helps decide districts for voting. It helps decide how much federal money is allocated to each state. It's extremely important, and you don't get another chance till 2030. So please make sure that you do that and spread the word to folks who haven't. And you can do it online. It doesn't take long at all. We are not going to be hosting early voting this year. We had talked about that last spring. They are not going to be doing that here, so that frees up this room for the month of October. A couple of updates on taxes. We're looking good for the year. We've had, over the last week, we've brought in $73,800. Our year-to-date total is $212,753, which is about 8.4% of our expected revenue. This next bit is really interesting. We sent out the tax bills with payment coupons so that taxpayers could break it up into 4 equal payments to help spread that cost. The first coupon is not due until October 1st. So you pay October, November, December, and then January 1st. We've already received payments from 8 different people who are starting to use those coupons, which is a good thing. That's getting off to the right start. We have the drop box installed out front. You probably saw it when you came in on the right-hand column. As you're coming in, that is for tax payments. People can drop off their money in there. No cash, please. Just a check with your tax bill. Unrelated to, well, semi-related to taxes. I was at a Grow Mills River meeting this week, and we got an update from Beverly Hanks about single-family sales price and both the median and the average. The median for the month of July, it was $365,000 sale price for a single family. The average, though, is $389,000. So most of the sales are happening around $365,000. You've got a couple of higher end homes that are probably pushing that average up to $389,000. On the comparison to last year, the average sale price for the month of July was $385,870. And in 2018, it was $361,000. So it's increasing so far year over year over year. I mentioned earlier, I was on a call this afternoon with Land of Sky, and there was a representative from the Richmond Federal Reserve branch. Went over a lot of data about the pandemic and how it's affected employment and sales and that sort of thing. It was all very interesting. not terribly unexpected. There was obviously some dips over the summer, big one in April, of course, but retail sales have rebounded, and they're actually above where they were at the same time last year. And home sales also have rebounded, and those are above where they were this time last year. And realtors have gotten very adept at selling homes virtually. Most people, not most people, but there have been a lot of stories of people buying homes without ever even coming to the state. Their realtor will take them to the site, FaceTime them or Skype them or Zoom or whatever, walk them around the property and answer their questions. And several properties and houses are being sold sight unseen, which is pretty remarkable, especially given the high value of some of the properties. That is it for the updates. I do have a request to cancel the September 10th meeting, if council is amenable to that. We don't have any pressing business unless you're ready to talk about healthcare, but barring that, there's no other pressing business that we foresee at the moment. So if council, yes, that's correct. Okay.
I have a question for you on the steering committee. I think you guys were looking at this, but I wasn't sure. I know we looked at this a long time ago on the planning board, but did you guys identify parcels that are suitable, that are left in the town limits that can be used for light industry that are still remaining? And if so, what that comparison is to, are those properties currently used for agricultural use? So, I know we're big on, we have light industry coming in, and that's great, but it's a little bit of heartburn because every time a light industry comes in, it pushes another agricultural property out. So we're trading off, I hate to say we're trading off our identity, but we are. So I was curious if that's been looked at or not.
You turn your mic on.
Most of the light industrial land left was around the airport, if I remember right. Around.
There's that.
Some over here.
I mean, there's two different things to consider. There's property that is zoned light industrial, and there's property that is available as light industrial that could be rezoned. Right. And we have done that analysis. I can't answer off the top of my head what that looks like, but we have identified properties that are suitable for development, that are farmland, some that aren't farmland. I'm glad you brought that up, because as we get into the policy side of the comprehensive plan, you're going to have some serious discussions amongst yourselves, with the public, and some internal reflection about what you want Mills River to be when it grows up. We are developing very quickly. We don't have a plan for that development, so we're going as quick as we can to stay ahead of it. But there will be people who want nothing to change. There will be people who want everything to change. There'll be people in the middle, and then there'll be people who don't care until the plan's adopted, and that's fine. But you, as the elected body, ultimately responsible for adopting this plan and setting policy for the community for the next 20 years, need to be prepared for some potentially, very likely, uncomfortable conversations with the public. So if you're at Ingalls, someone comes up to you, do your best. So with that being said, I guess we need a motion to cancel the meeting on September 10th.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor of canceling the September 10th meeting?
That's all I have.
Okay. Are there any council comments?
I had a question about, I had a lady call me this week about the last meeting. I think the Facebook Live was not working.
That's correct.
Right? Yeah, but is there a way for them to go back and look at these meetings? Are they archived?
Okay. Yeah, we have it downloaded. If someone wants to view it, we can get that to them.
Okay, they would just need to.
They need to contact me, and we can figure out how to get it to them.
Thank you.
Yeah, all these meetings are recorded, whether or not they're streamed. We have recordings of them.
Anybody have anything else? A motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
See y'all next time.